That was an utter disgrace to the nation.
Yeah, that was not pretty.
That was something.
Like,
I think that Trump
There's
definitely
real
jumped
hate
in
there.
too much.
yeah, but at the start, Biden wasn't much better.
Right.
And then I think Biden kind of picked up that he would look better by letting Wallace shut him up.
Yeah.
But
Can't hear
I don't-
anything you just said, Spenny.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know what it is. Maybe you
your
have it
volume's
muted. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a. Oh, he's on. I don't think there was a
No.
clear winner.
Doesn't say you're muted. Weird. No, it was some.
All it was pot shots. Like 70% of it was pot shots. 30% of it was some weird semblance of policy discussion.
Like, if anybody lost tonight, it's America. Like,
Yeah.
And
This
not
is what
wrong.
we've
as soon
got.
as- oh, yeah. This is what we've got in the hallowed halls. A real estate developer and a guy who's been basically in the chair of power, whether a senator or a vice president, for the better half of nearly a century or half a century.
how old
And-
is America?
The United States would be, let's see, 1976. We were 200.
250.
2016 would be 244 years. Wait,
So-
no. The 254 years.
So Joe Biden's been in politics for a fifth of America's reign as a country.
Yeah.
Almost.
Mhm.
Like,
No, I was right. 244. 254.
yeah. So he's at what, 47 years? So yeah, like about a fifth, like, of the time we've been a country, Joe Biden's been in politics.
And that has a particular appeal, I suppose, to a certain mind because it offers the semblance of stability.
But also, what has he done to make America
Powers
better?
would be the Biden.
I heard you a little bit.
I think it was delayed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what has he done to improve anything besides, the crime bill and writing these tax codes and like all that jibbery junk? Like,
Right. I think the 94 crime bill is just gonna be this big cloud looming over him. Something's just always gonna have to deal with because that really fucked him. At least nowadays, because now it just looks terrible.
but like, truth, being like, Trump's not a perfect president either. Like, you can't say that he has done everything perfectly up to this point.
Regarding what?
I mean, look at his tariffs. And that kind of screwed over. I mean, he's really hurt the farmers. Like, he's not a perfect president. There's no such thing.
No, he's not. I just haven't seen anything with the tariffs that affects me that I'm aware of.
You don't drink scotch.
Yeah. There we go. That's it.
Even that's not that bad. I mean, farmers are hurting, from what I understand. Spencer, can you talk yet? Yeah.
I said I
everybody-
don't know.
I don't
God damn
know.
it.
I mean, you can't say that he's, you can sit there and rip Biden about being, in office for so long and not doing anything, but you can't say Trump's perfect either.
No, I wouldn't say he's perfect, but it's just if this is what we're going to be talking about, if it's this versus that, like, I don't think that Trump did that terrible of a thing with the tariffs versus, like Kamala Harris, for example, locking people up for smoking weed, and she laughed about it, even though she smoked weed herself. So she obviously knows it's not that big of a deal. Like, really fucking with people's lives. And then Trump made something more expensive. That's not really that bad.
So do you say overall Trump's
I-
been better for the country than
Obviously. I
Yeah,
mean, he's been better for me personally.
because you got rid of the individual mandate and what
Oh,
about
yeah.
tax cuts?
Oh, yeah. And just cutting down on the regulations. It just created more jobs. all that shit, dude. Just made everything better as far as just the economy goes. That's obvious. So
I don't know, Craig Driver knows a little more about this stuff than me. I wish he was here for that.
the tariffs, yeah.
The tariffs do fuck the farmers, but at the same time, this all goes back to Nixon opening up business with China, and that greatly shifted our entire economic structure in a sense, because that's a new market. Now we have to adjust for that, and the farmers naturally adjusted in a sense of utilizing their
Using what?
Well,
what the fuck.
another thing with tariffs that I always like to point out in defense of Trump is like they're nothing new. Like,
Well, no.
not like he created the tariff system. Like, if you look at like beef from Canada and any dairy production from Canada, like the tariffs are at like 50% to America. Like, they're ridiculously high, and it's been that way for 30 years. Like, you know why you don't see grade A Alberta beef in the States or why it's so expensive? Because the tariffs on any sort of cattle or dairy production is ridiculously high from Canada. Because
It's protectionism.
yeah, same with lumber industry in Canada.
Yeah.
I think Wallace kind of
God damn
steered
it.
away.
I wish we could hear
Anytime
him.
Trump started getting serious about Hunter Biden, like Joe Biden's like that's been debunked, and then
Yeah, I
blah,
didn't
blah, blah.
understand that.
Then
like-
Wallace would shift the subject.
I have not seen any of that debunked at all.
No, me either.
I even tried to look it up. I didn't see anything. So I don't
I
know.
saw some lady on
Sounds
Twitter with a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris logo for her Twitter profile pic. So that's been clearly debunked at this point when someone brought it up. So clearly it's over with.
Clearly. It's
Is that the new favorite word of the left? Is debunked?
It was not Courtney
They
Gallup.
moved. I'm glad they moved away from racist and white supremacist to now they're just using the innocuous words like debunked. That's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
great progress.
I mean, the tax thing was interesting, but not condemning white supremacists was interesting. That would have been an easy home run for him.
Yeah. It's
But-
just he's done it before multiple times. Like when that whole thing got brought
He
up, he
has.
did it like 3 or 4 fucking times and went over it and over and over it. And then he needs to go over it
Yeah.
yet again, I guess. I mean, I understand what you're saying that it's an easy one, but just the fact that it even gets brought up that he needs to do it. It's like he has.
Yeah. And why didn't we ask
Wallace-
Joe Biden to, condemn Antifa or
Right. That's something
You know.
he hasn't done. So
no? That was a perfect opportunity. You asked Trump to condemn white supremacists. Why not ask Biden to do the same for the other side? That's only fair.
right. Well,
and I bet you Joe Biden would have done it, to be completely honest.
yeah. Well, I think
I was really
Trump.
hoping for more like not lucid Joe Biden during this debate,
Yeah, Sleepy
to be
Joe.
completely honest.
He took a nap
But-
before. He was ready to go.
Got extra applesauce at the nursing home before they wheeled him out.
God.
I don't know.
I think that Trump had a good point though, and he's like, "I'll call out anybody. Who should I call out?" It's like, "Oh, just white supremacists." Like, okay, like who is that?
Yeah.
We're these days we're talking about actual groups of people.
Yeah.
Like, who is it that we need to call out and condemn these days? Like that, I think that's a valid point. He's like the Proud Boys. Like, it's not the Proud Boys that's typically starting this shit.
He didn't condemn them either. He said hang back. He
Yeah,
didn't condemn them.
there really isn't a
Didn't
reason
call
to
them white
condemn them.
supremacists.
They don't do shit. I mean, they will get out in the streets and they'll fight back, but usually it's Black Lives Matter or Antifa starting shit.
Usually, but
Usually.
Gavin's boys have been instigators to some extent here and there, but neither here nor there. You were right that the majority of the instigations are by these particular
Hold up.
black bloc
Can you go in
groups.
a little more, Spenny?
We got a message. It says something about Trump and
Farmers support
farmers.
Trump. Yeah.
It's such a difficult position because obviously when you're in a trade war, like has been announced by the president before, that this is a trade war with the Chinese, there are going to be certain industries that they are going to target because those industries here natively are so entwined with what they're providing over there. They're making a shit ton of soybeans to try to feed a billion-person populace over the Pacific.
God damn it! I
So
wish you could say
naturally they're going to
something.
fucking target it.
Fucking A. Yeah.
I
See, I don't know a whole lot
think
about
there's
this.
A clear winner. I think they're both. I don't think it went well for either side. I mean, let's be honest.
No.
Is there an undecided voter in America these days?
I don't know.
My only decision is between Trump and not voting. But
Come on,
That's
not even
about it.
Kanye.
Oh,
What about Kanye?
if
Give
Kanye
him a
was
real
serious,
shot.
then yeah, I'd put him right up there. Absolutely. Fuck it.
He has a VP. I mean, I'd never heard that person before, but like, I don't know.
That's a tough one.
Who jumped in?
I don't know.
Oh, we lost
What's
it.
up,
No, it's somebody else. Who is it?
Logan?
Logan. Yeah.
Sure, he's Trump training
dude?
hard.
Yeah.
What up?
What'd you think of that? Did you watch that?
Fucking.
Well, obviously Trump won.
yeah.
And he was up against 1 versus 2, and he still won. It was Trump versus Wallace and Biden, and he won.
To be completely fair, I think Wallace was about as even as he could have been.
He took some swings at Biden, but it could have been
Yeah.
a little worse. 'Cause he
Yeah,
did-
it could have been.
I have issue with Wallace not bringing up the transcript regarding the very fine people comment.
yeah. Yeah. he-
Well,
Not-
yeah.
Oh,
There's
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I just pieced it together. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of expecting them to give Biden more softballs, but I don't know.
Yeah. He should have really grilled him on how was it debunked? Like who debunked it? But I guess I don't know if
Well,
that's what you typically get
what-
into.
To be fair about the presidential debate, like, what about a candidate's son is actually relevant to America going forward? Not what's in the past, but like going forward, how does that help the debate? How is that going to help people decide? Like, is a Joe Biden voter going to see that and be like, oh no, like, now I'm definitely not voting for him because his son accepted money from Russia or the Ukraine? Like,
I can tell you how it's relevant, although Trump seemingly had a difficult time in articulating it. The relevancy comes from the idea, at the very least, that under
There
his
you go.
own father's vice presidency, Hunter Biden utilized his position of privilege as being the vice president's son
Right.
to enrich himself in a fashion that would be unworthy of what we should see in American politics. Now, you
Yes.
can make a case. You can make a case for Ivanka and Jared, but their
you
investments were before the presidency of Ivanka's father. So the case kind of falls apart.
how much money have they lost becoming consultants? Like, in the grand scheme of things, like,
Who the fuck knows?
I would
Yeah.
say a lot more than what they're making now. What did Ivanka Trump get? $700,000 a year being consultant. I bet you before she could have went in the family business, she could have been making millions. He said himself his family's taking huge losses financially to help run the country. If that's
Right.
necessarily true, I don't know.
Well, they'd
But
have to put themselves just on hold. They can't be opening businesses and doing what they were doing before. So, yeah, who knows what they lost because they could have just
Yeah.
kept expanding.
also on the note that, like, with the tax returns, like, what I'm wondering, I don't know the tax code that well. I don't know how taxes work. I can barely do my own. If it weren't for TurboTax, I try and figure it out, but I can't. How much? So Trump has not taken a salary, and I know that before the elections, or after he won the election against Hillary, he had to pretty much take every private business out of his own name outside of charities, because he can't be a business owner and run the country because there's conflicts of interest. So he transferred
Right.
a lot of his, like every single piece of business, like for-profit business, to Don Jr. and Eric. And so the only money he would technically be making is political donations, which is non-taxable income, and his $400,000 a year as United States president, which he donated, which is charitable, which makes it non-taxable. So the
Right.
$750 his first year in office would almost make sense because it seems like outside of his investments that he currently has, which I guess you can get capital gains and stuff on, which that's probably somewhere in 750, knowing him. Like he brought in zero income the last 3 years.
Right.
Yep.
So all he has to pay tax on is his, but then with the mortgages and stuff like that, it might offset. Like
Yeah,
it's complicated. Like when you don't bring anything, but you're super rich, because the taxes versus the tax cuts, how much are you making and how much do you have to pay in?
Yeah.
And my take on
Also,
this,
why do politicians? I get it, but it's also kind of confused me. They shouldn't get tax return, like tax refunds.
Well, you owe a certain amount, and if you pay in more, I mean, you get a refund.
Like Joe Biden's a career politician. Joe Biden's been doing it for almost 50 years. Like the money that he pays in goes towards his own job, and like why do they accept tax returns? I don't think if you hold public office anything higher than anything higher than state level, you shouldn't get a tax return.
Well, just look at it as any other job. If you owe 300,000 but you pay in 340,000, you paid 40,000 too much. So should you just lose that because you had a certain position versus another position? It's just you are in this tax bracket, you owe this amount of money, but depending on what you claim, depends on how much money gets put in. So like the only reason we get tax returns is because we pay too much money in and we get some of it back.
I get that, but let's say my job, say my budget, what I'm expected to make is $100,000 in a month. Say I make $120,000, my company keeps that for profit. Why doesn't that get returned to me if I'm the one that made that money? I mean, it's the same idea. If you're a politician, it's not like you, me, anyone here working and paying taxes, and you're working for the very
Those are
thing that
different
you're.
things. You're saying why don't you get a chunk of the money that you earned for the company?
Yeah, I got it when someone else could have or couldn't have.
Those are totally
Yeah.
different things.
But they're politicians. They're paying into themselves. Like they're working for their company, and they're paying their taxes straight to their company, technically.
Right, but
So it's
under a
simplistic.
company, you don't have a set amount that you owe the company. In
not
government,
funny.
you owe the government a certain amount because you're a citizen.
Tell you, if I miss budget 5 months in a row, I don't have a job.
Right. Well,
If
in
I
this
make
case, he
I'm
overpaid,
successful.
and that's what the whole thing is with Trump, is that he should pay more in taxes, but he didn't, is what they're trying to say, even though he's paid millions of dollars.
Yeah, he has not done. From what I understand, he has not done anything illegal. He
No,
just has-
everything's part of the tax code.
yeah,
And that's the ridiculous part, that it's that complicated. And why aren't they picking on other people who take the same advantages? Because 750 is a super low number. I'll give you that.
Joe Biden's
like-
done the same thing.
Joe Biden pays his fair share, his tax rate. Like for some reason, I don't know why he doesn't. But how much of that money's reported? Like, do you really believe he only made $900,000 last year?
No,
Oh,
it
God.
all depends.
The establishment fucking media is on fire. They're calling it
course they
the
are.
worst presidential debate has ever been witnessed.
It might.
It was pretty bad.
I just
Did we
don't know.
expect anything different?
I was
I
thoroughly
don't think so.
entertained all the way through.
What does it matter what they pay in taxes either, though, to the grand scheme of things? It doesn't effectively present how good you are of leader. Like, people say...
Oh, it doesn't mean
like,
shit.
No. And they look at Trump's and his business failings, and like, do you know how many small businesses fail or how many businesses fail? Like, pretty
Right.
much you're not a successful business person until you have a business fail. Like,
Mhm.
it's not easy, and I don't know. I just don't see the
Markets
whole argument
change.
behind it.
No.
How many people are actually mad about it, though? Like, oh, Trump pays less taxes than a school teacher. Like, okay, school teachers
There's
don't make
just
much
so many
money.
angles that people can take.
Yeah, exactly.
well, yeah. Also,
Yeah.
what they don't get is like rich people don't get hit with taxes the same way most people do, because like a lot of their money is tied up in like their investments. It's not like they necessarily have an income constantly, like year to year, you know.
Well, no, then like they're all based off their assets. It's not like they have that much money in their bank account, depending on what
The
companies they
thing-
own, all that.
Well,
One thing that isn't brought up is how much tax revenue has been made off of all the employees that Trump employs and pays a particular
Oh,
salary
yeah.
across different states, and
Right.
And
how the state revenue tax and the federal income tax might play into effect as to how much money has actually been generated off of the goods and services provided by those Trump employees to
Right.
either the state level or the federal level.
Yeah, exactly. Also, until I actually see a copy of the document like Harris put out, like Biden put out, like of the taxes, until I actually physically see Trump's and I just have to take the New York Times word for it, I have a really hard time doing that.
They said they had it, didn't
Rachel
they? And
Maddow
they're just
had
not
it,
going to
didn't she?
release it.
Yeah, but that was 2005. So everything they talk about is the last 15 years, which coincidentally, what's 15 years ago?
I don't know.
2005.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, he was paying like $25.8 billion in income tax that year, I think, off like 150 million made, or 1.5 million made. That's what it was. Like,
Right.
but like, it could just be a hit piece, or even if it's like somewhat true, like that Tim Pool webinar or webcast you shared, like
Yeah.
that really lays it out. And
Well, yeah, are they
It's
trying to
just-
say like he paid $7.50? It's like when McDonald's says that their burgers are made with 100% beef. It's like
Yeah.
it's made with 100% beef. Is it 100% beef? Is it 1% beef? You know, I paid $10, and like he the example he gives, I paid $10 in taxes. That's
Yeah,
true.
He did the Rick and Morty thing. I can relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. You're coming through now. We got to hear your side on the farmers.
Yeah, I had to restart the whole thing to get it to work.
Okay.
Being in the farming community, I guess me and my dad farm 400 acres. I don't know too much about it, but I'm around a fuckload of farmers,
Yeah.
and it's if you talk to a lot of these farmers, it's kind of something inevitable that had to happen, and they respect Trump because he's finally trying to take care of this problem with China and this massive trade indifference that we have with them. So they, the bottom line is what they get paid, and they know that. So it does affect them negatively, but they're not so much mad at Trump. They're mad at why this situation happened in the first place, which somebody mentioned earlier, Reagan. It might have started with Reagan. That's our take. That's really the farmers' take. You talk to 90% of farmers, it's like, it's unfortunate. It had to happen. It was an avalanche waiting to fall. And Trump just will be the one guy that's going to say, I'll try to take care of this fucking thing. It might hurt some people in the long run, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
he's done some things with taking care of them financially as well. I don't know. He passed that one bill where X amount of farmers got X amount of dollars,
Yeah.
which doesn't help. It's they need better prices is what they need. They don't need,
Right.
money. They need better prices.
don't need
That's gonna help
subsidies.
them in the long run, and
Right.
us in the long run. So
is the price of corn
Yep.
still
Right.
not really low this year, Spencer?
yeah, and then there's also people talking about giving out loans. What's that?
Is the price of corn still super low right now? Or did it
What's
go
that,
back up?
Jimmy?
Is corn still super low?
Not
Like
bad.
the price?
It's
Or
not
did it go
that
back
bad.
up?
Soybeans is what really got hit.
I heard earlier this year in like August. that
Yeah, corn's okay. It's soybeans, I believe, that's low.
It's also one of the best crops they've had in a long time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's soybeans that takes the hit. Apparently, out of our 400 acres that we farm, I think less than 80 of it is soybeans.
Okay.
It shouldn't be 50-50, but it shouldn't be 25% either. Soybeans. There's money to be made in them when the prices are decent. So
Right.
as
I
far
know.
as dairy goes, dairy is just completely in the shitter, and dairy's always been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were dumping milk when COVID happened.
Dairy's
Like,
just the tough thing to do.
I think COVID hurt that the most too, didn't it?
Yeah,
They're
well, yeah,
dumping
no one was
milk.
buying milk. There's people, not my family members, but yeah, Wisconsin, there was farmers that were just dumping milk.
Mhm.
You know, they'd have a whole, I don't know, truckload or tank full of it with nowhere to go, and they're just dumping it. You know, and luckily my cousins, that never happened to them.
Well,
They
that's
actually
good.
sell to Ellsworth cheese curds. So unless cheese curds start going in the tank, they're
Oh,
good.
I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah. So
Well, so last year with the farmers too.
no, I think
With-
too many people like cheese curd.
Yeah, that's true. With last year with the farmers, at least in Minnesota and Nebraska and Iowa, that's all I kind of know about. With how wet the fields were and the fact that most places weren't starting harvest until like beginning of November. Didn't insurance pay a lot last year, which is also kind of bringing the price of everything down?
Right. I'm not sure how much that affects, little guys like me.
Okay.
Like me, it's my dad mainly. But what's a nasty little positive is this storm in Iowa that completely pummeled fuckload of corn in Iowa. It was like 10 million acres or some shit like that, which raised the price up. Within 24 hours, I think it raised the price 8 to 10 cents, which doesn't seem like much, but it is,
Right.
considering that's just per bushel.
Yeah.
Bushel ain't very much. Yeah. So yeah,
So Logan,
that's my take as a really dumb farmer. That's all I can tell you.
you're just your dad's farm hand, right?
And yes. I own a few of my own cattle, but that's really, and help my dad when I can.
Did you finally come up with enough names for them?
And as a business owner, Trump is way better.
Brian, what did you hear from Trump
All
tonight?
right, somebody else talk.
All right.
Brian, what did you hear tonight, bro? I think I would say you're the most pro-Trump out of all of us. What were things from Trump that you did not like to hear?
That's a good one.
Man, that's a hard one.
At what point did your erection lessen?
He's got to insult his boy.
Things
Not insult per se, but a critique in a sense,
He's gonna
because
say nothing.
I heard a couple of
Flawless.
things tonight that made me waffle on him, say, "Come on now, can't be doing that." And it's not anything in regards to bringing up Hunter Biden. I think that was actually legitimate, although he just presented that in a completely wrong way. But
Sure.
what was something that you heard from him tonight that you went in regards to?
Well, okay. So first of all, I have to start out with the caveat that I don't put any premium on the debates at all, because I don't think they actually change people's minds. And people can say how bad this debate was because they weren't really talking about substantive issues.
It was a trash fire. That's why I loved it.
Yeah, but it's not like debates in the past have been any better. It's can you really flesh out and have a conversation about fundamental ideas where you get 2 minutes to talk about a very broad topic, and quite frankly, I don't think the networks that host these debates, what they really care about is ratings. So, anything that gets people viewing it is what they're going to promote.
It's good for them. That's in their self-interest to get ratings.
Yeah,
off of
because
happening.
if it was a debate, an academic debate where people are just going through bullet points, the only people watching it would be nerds like us who would actually find that fascinating. But
Right.
Sure.
you have to remember, they're trying to appeal to the average moron who watches television.
Sure.
You know? So okay, so with that caveat, like all I expect out of Trump is make it entertaining and beat up Joe and, you know, beat up the adversary, and he did that, you know?
Yeah. The whole thing was
Okay.
sensationalized. There were a lot of like bullshit
Of course
points
it
brought
was.
up on both sides. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it's hard for me to really say what was bullshit about what Trump brought up, because none of it, as far as I knew, was actually debunked. But
Guys, he saved Big Ten football.
yeah, yeah, that one. Okay.
It's my vote. Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Do you know the
that
story
swung
behind
me.
that?
I actually don't. I have no idea where that comes from. I've heard of it, but I don't know anything.
Kevin Warren, who used to work for the Vikings, took a job with as the pretty much the guy that runs the Big Ten, and they had their season suspended a lot longer than anybody else, and they weren't going to play football at all. And 3 other of the Power 5 conferences were. And Trump actually called the Big Ten and talked to Kevin Warren for like an hour about how they can get the Big Ten back. So yeah, Trump did say.
Okay.
So yeah, and Ryan, or wait, who was it? John.
Yeah.
The question of like, what was something like that I would disagree with Trump? So like,
What did you dislike? Maybe
Yeah,
disagree with. Maybe
Okay.
something that you didn't push harder against Wallace on or push on Biden for. Anything that you did not like from his performance tonight.
well, so like when he's addressing the question on climate change, like, so I'm in the same camp with Mitch that I really like nuclear energy as like I think that's a good idea. Like we should
Right.
try to promote that and build more reactors. So I think like that's something where Trump could offer that as a solution because that would reduce carbon emissions. Like here's the thing, I think so like just flat out denying that climate change like may happen is not the most persuasive argument. I think it would be better if he said, you know, it may be happening and carbon emissions may contribute to it. However, the solutions that the left offer are not going to work. And like, you know, because
Yeah.
if you
He tries to say that, but he doesn't put it very eloquently. He just says it's going
Yeah.
to be $100 trillion, and then you
Yeah.
have to.
I thought Trump did it.
plus
Yeah.
the left wing alarmism of saying it's a matter of extinction, it goes way too far because like, it's not actually an extinction risk if the Earth gets warmer. Because quite frankly, we know from like the Earth's history, like
The
it's
core
been
samples.
warmer. Yeah, it's been warmer in the past, and there was still life on Earth. It's not like everything's gonna die.
Right. Well, we just
Like-
came out of an ice age that like not even 500 years ago.
Right. That plus it's like to me it's like if things change, I mean that's only a bad thing if you can't adapt to change. So like, you know, sea levels rise. Okay, so if you happen to live in Miami or happen to own real estate on the coast, maybe that sucks for you.
Maybe
Like-
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, but
Ooh,
there's a
shots
solution.
fired.
Oh,
There's a solution to that. You move, you know? The
Obama's not
coastline
worried
sea-
about it. All these
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
rich fucks aren't worried about it. The banks, nobody. So just how serious is it?
Yeah, or like another thing they bring up is like as it gets warmer, it'll get drier in certain areas. So like maybe you can't farm in certain places. But it's like, okay, so you
Yeah.
farm somewhere else. Like maybe some places, you know, the weather patterns might change, but you can adapt to it.
It's been that way forever.
Like I'm
Since
pretty
the
sure
dawn
we
of
can
time.
figure out how to survive.
I mean, why is
Yeah.
New Orleans still a city? I mean,
Because those Irish dug those fucking canals fairly deep. That's probably why.
Possibly.
I
It's just
thought,
like
I
that
thought
infestation you
Trump
can't get
did
rid of.
And
Yeah,
like,
I thought Trump did a horrible job of defending himself tonight. When Biden would make false claims against him, he didn't. He should have gone into details about his taxes a little bit more, besides just saying, "I've paid millions of dollars."
Yeah.
In terms of when he brought up Charlottesville, Biden brought up Charlottesville, and Trump never even addressed that.
Right.
He could tell you to go look at the video. If you watch the video, he clearly says the white nationalists are bad people, terrible people.
Yeah.
I thought he did a terrible job of defending himself. So not like anyone on the left is going to care what he says, but if he had a platform to defend himself against some of these things, I think he did a bad job of doing it.
Yeah, when you
I
have
agree with
100
that.
million viewers.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
guys, Snopes already said everything Trump said is a lie, and they fact checked it as 100% true or 100% false.
He did.
So,
Yes.
the biggest thing that I hate, and it was brought up again today, is blaming Trump for COVID. Like the 200,000 COVID deaths are all his fault. If anybody else was in office, whether it's Republican or Democrat, how much different would it be?
They would screech federalism and they would put it on the opposite party, which is what Trump did not do.
Not
Did
even
not-
not even that. Just how many less? Like realistically, do they think they'd have 130,000 less deaths, 170,000 less deaths? Like,
I bet we
that's
wouldn't
what-
even
well,
have to
yeah.
be dealing with it because somebody just released it. That's my wild
They don't
conspiracy
particularly-
theory.
I hear what Gary's saying. They don't quantify how much would be too much. I have, and again, Trump needs to vocalize this because I have the feeling that even if it was half of what the current number is, his opponents would still be on the attack saying it was too much. What Trump needs
Yeah.
to do is continuously focus on promoting federalism. Like he was doing during the pandemic's initial stages, he was saying that the states need to be the ones to control their own particular policies because one policy across the whole continental US and beyond is not sufficient. It will not work out. There will be a backfire. And he did not do
Right.
that tonight. He said he praised himself up, but he did not mention, at least in an adequate state, that governors in California, governors in New York, individuals within the Democratic rank and file who held executive positions as his governors basically got behind the media hype train, calling him a xenophobe, calling him a racist,
Yeah.
calling him an individual who was going to destroy the economy. And he didn't bring up the media coverage at the beginning of this saying that this was essentially a nothing burger and that the flu was more
Right.
dangerous than the coronavirus.
Oh my God, there's
He
so
did-
many examples of that.
He did not do any of that tonight. So I have to agree with Spenny on the matter is that he's not done an adequate job at very least prepping to defend himself by utilizing a counter-offensive and saying, hey, wait a second. I'm not the one that said come to Chinatown. I'm not the one that was calling anybody a xenophobe when the notion was put out there to ban all travel to China. You can make an argument and say, well, it was already here. Yeah, but imagine how much more it could have been here if that decision had not been made at the time that it did. I wanted his ass, honestly, to fucking throw all the Chinese nationals out of the country. I wanted him to close this shit down in late December, early January, instead of when he did. I was on the
Yeah.
cast with you and Driver when this thing was initially happening, Ryan. I said,
Yeah.
he's not working quick enough and not in as harsh enough of a way for me to be satisfied. And I'll still hold that against him. But at the same time,
Yeah.
all the Dems keep saying, well, you didn't do enough. Well, where was their plan? What was their master plan for any
Those
of
guys.
this? You have the plan in a microcosm across democratic cities and states who didn't make this a big deal, along with the Republican states as well. We have to throw that out there. But
Also,
you know,
well, one thing too that I've showed you guys that video before, where if they would have closed it down when now they want him to close it down, that was happening right over the Iowa and New Hampshire caucuses. All you would have heard is, "Oh, Trump isn't for fair process," or he does blah
Right.
blah blah. Like there was no perfect time, and all of his advisors who are fairly left leaning. Fauci, the CDC director, like
Not left leaning, neocon leaning.
yes, regardless, but they all told him no, don't shut it down. Like
Right.
there's no need to do it yet. Blah blah blah. Like it just doesn't make sense to me that they could have had it shut down, but everyone told them no, don't do that. You don't need to do it yet. It's not that big a deal. Blah blah blah. And here we are.
All I had to do was Hermit Kingdom this bitch in January. We would have kept a lot of stuff open. We would have gotten ahead of the curve. We blew, essentially, with Trump in part to blame, but not fully, we blew a 2-ocean advantage. And we didn't do nearly enough, quick enough, to be able to combat this. And by the time that actual efforts were put in, the efforts weren't nearly strong enough, and a week later is probably too late.
Yeah.
The moment the first case touched down, I said, all Chinese nationals, also in part because of that Harvard scandal
That's
where
what I
they're
was just
stealing
gonna say.
vials of bio. Yeah, I haven't forgotten that.
That came out in January. I was telling my parents about that, and I was reading back through that. Was it Massachusetts, like Department of Justice or something like that, was talking about how that guy was directly tied to that lab in Wuhan.
Yeah.
Like that's
It's
the
all
most
funny
fucked
how
up
that
part.
got swept under the rug.
Yeah. That's what makes
the
me say,
moment-
would we even have this if we had a different president? Do we have this just because it's the only weapon that they really got against Trump? They had to
I have no idea.
slow his roll.
because they like control that much, and this is the perfect way to do it.
I don't know about
Just
that. My
follow the
standing is
money.
still that
Just follow the money.
My
That guy got
standing-
millions of dollars, and he's just so happened to be tied to this lab in Wuhan.
Yeah,
And he's tied to the
absolutely.
vials being smuggled. And they say when they look at the genetic sequence of this virus, it skips steps. So it's evolved, and they're missing the piece of how it jumped from here to here. So the thing has been manipulated somewhere along the way, and that seems very obvious. So it just
Yeah.
makes you wonder what's really going on, because it always started of, oh, the bat in Wuhan. Like just that other
But
bullshit.
the bat's never been confirmed either. That was just a theory.
No, I know, but that's the one that the media pushed.
Well, of course, but you don't.
Meanwhile,
tell me
there's
believe
these-
media.
No, I know, but meanwhile, there's actual government documents that show, hey, look at this connection to this lab in Wuhan. Like that's an actual thing there, not just
Not
like
to mention the erratic behavior of the CCP and the WHO when it
Yes.
came to the initial handling of these particular matters. It's-
preliminary
it-
investigations show no evidence of human-to-human transmission. It's like,
I'm-
what are you talking
I'm still
about?
willing to bet. I'm there with you to an extent. I'm still willing to bet something funny was happening in that lab. I just think that communists are communists, and they've proven their track record to be completely inept with handling these sorts of things. I think this is an accident. I think it's an accident that the Chinese wanted to fucking cover up as a means of preserving political prestige across the globe. And
It's a
they couldn't
conveniently
fucking
timed
cover it up,
accident.
and they couldn't round them up fast enough. They just
Meanwhile, China has serious issues with Trump and the way that he's been handling shit, and they don't want him in office anymore. They clearly want Biden to win.
Of course they do. They're fucking self-interested in that. I'm not particularly sure that the Russians want Trump to win either after what's been going on in Syria these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I just think with all of that at play, why not? Why wouldn't they do something to try to take Trump down? I don't know who's behind it. I can't point fingers at who's behind it, but there's people that don't want Trump in office, and all of these pieces just seem to be falling into place. And when you follow the money, it's very, very interesting how all these things seem to get tied together just through all the money that, like, it's just, what an odd coincidence, all of it. It's,
Yeah.
it's so hard for me to see these things these days with all these strange coincidences. Like, oh, I just needed to believe that this all happened by chance. It's like, I can't buy it.
Hey,
Not anymore.
I'm as big a strange coincidence guy as you'll find. I was the one fucking on the soapbox about this early, but I still
Well, and you've
find it
converted
more
me.
plausible.
You fucking
I
got me
find
on
it-
this shit.
To an extent, I find it more plausible that this is just political opportunism. I don't think that the Dems colluded with the CCP as a means of releasing this virus.
They don't have to.
And thrashing the economy.
They don't have
What
to.
I do
China can do it
believe-
all on their own.
Yeah, what I do believe is that the Dems saw this as a possibility to undermine the Trump presidency to a particular extent, bottle everything up, I think their initial plan maybe is to try to point at economic numbers once the presidential elections came around. And they just so happened to luck into a Minneapolis police officer putting a knee into the back of a guy's neck.
Sure.
Having possibly some sort of relation to that man's death. And they lucked into massive racial division because that was not a talking point. The talking point was always Trump's a racist this, Trump's a racist that, but no real movement to back it up. And then not even Breonna Taylor didn't even start this. George Floyd was the one that started it.
Right. And then, are you out of here? All right, we'll catch you later, homie.
See you, Spenny. Good seeing you.
Peace out, dude.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Anytime. But let's go back to that and look at all the fucking organized protests going on. Like, that didn't seem to happen just by random chance either. The bricks that got laid out, piles of bricks around for people, the money getting funneled into all that shit. I don't know, man. I don't know. That seemed to be a
BLM
whole.
money going up to Act Blue.
That seemed to be a whole nother organized
Freedom Fund
thing.
money
Yeah.
going to freeing rapists and other sorts of individuals who have been taken in for explicitly violent action.
Right.
It wasn't as if all of them were taken in as protesters. Otherwise, my God, the prisons would have been fucking full and no amount of money would have been able to bail all of them out. But
Yeah.
no,
Kamala Harris disagrees.
Oh, of course Kamala Harris disagrees. She has skin in the game.
Yeah. I think this all just goes back to the deep state. Whoever that might be, the people with money behind the scenes that
It's the
can put shit together.
establishment. It's neocons and neolibs who have been pulling the strings at this thing,
But where
including
does-
the DNC and the RNC.
Where does this money come from? Because it doesn't clearly come from any of those places. You can see how the money's spent on people, and especially with all this ballot harvesting, like who are the ones that are funneling money into that shit? Like somehow, some way, people are funneling money into these organized, like little things that are happening. Like somebody has to be setting this up because you saw it in the video with Project Veritas. Somebody's giving this guy a shit ton of fucking money to go out and harvest ballots. Who?
Here's an interesting little tidbit. Spanish-speaking viewers of Telemundo expressed their preference of who won tonight's presidential debate. 66% Trump, 34% Biden.
Wow.
That's something that is a bit eye-opening.
Did everything get translated properly?
I have no idea. Immigration wasn't even touched on tonight,
No.
which is fascinating. Let me find the term. In the Latin American countries, there's a term for a military / political leader. It's called a caudillo. Caudillo? Yeah, I think so. I think that's how you pronounce it in Spanish. It's kind of a strongman, macho type of expression that a lot of the Latin American countries in Central America and South America have had to deal with due to political instability. It seems as if that type of caricature in a leader pulls favorably if I'm reading it. So maybe Trump is leaning into that a bit more. Maybe that's why he's garnering a bit more support from Latin American communities than Biden is. But who knows if Telemundo is just the Fox equivalent in Latin America. I'd have to look into that. But if those numbers ring true across Spanish-speaking individuals within the U.S. who have only been here for 1 or 2 generations, I think that might tip some of the places like Texas which is already kind of presumed to be Trump, but even more so it's not a risk of being a purple state. And then also tip other places that are in the southern more districts of the country.
God, this coverage is going to be terrible.
Of course it is.
Just quoting how Biden told Trump to shut up. Yep.
I bet you Courtney Gower loved that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. Like, I get it's Trump's thing, but like it was so uncivilized, and I think he was more to blame than Biden. Like Biden has his fair share of the guilt, but like it was kind of a shit show.
Oh, it absolutely was. Absolutely.
I won tonight, fellas. I'm willing to say I won. Hold on. Give me a second. Hold on.
All right.
Does this look like the face of a loser? Does it?
You have red hair, so
No, I said face, not hair. I said face. Does this look like the face of a loser? No. I won tonight. I win.
Yep.
Everybody else could have lost. I won. Because this was fucking fantastic.
It was.
This was all the firestorm that I wanted it to be. It was ugly. It was brutal. It was amazing.
It was
I loved
entertaining
it.
as hell.
I loved it.
Yep. I enjoyed it. Could have been better, but it was still a good one.
Fantastic. 100%
Yeah.
of the way. I have no reservations in saying that. This was everything I hoped it would be. I hope nobody's minds were changed. I hope voting numbers are less than what they were in 2016. You know what I also hope? I hope it's the exact same results, because this is the exact same thing that happened 4 years ago.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. It is Groundhog's Day. I hope nobody learned their lesson, and I hope the same thing happens.
Here's the issue that I have though, like, so let's say Biden wins, we're fucked. Like, it's either going to be a terrible economy and just another standstill for 4 to 8 years. But like, I would love Trump to win, and I will be honest when I say I'm going to vote for him. But at the same time, it's just gonna be 4 more fucking years of dealing with the same shit that we've been dealing with for how long? Like, with the Democrats being the way they are. And we're just gonna have to deal with that, and that's what drives me nuts, is that there's no winning with this.
No,
Well,
there's not.
I don't know about there being no winning.
It's not like
there's
we're gonna go
certainly-
vote for Joe Jorgensen all of a sudden after all this,
No.
are we?
And I am definitely more critical of her and the Libertarians this year than I should be,
Because they're
I'm,
batshit fucking crazy this year.
well, I'm just still
They've
pissed
always
off
been.
from. I'm just still pissed off from 2 years ago when they had every chance in the world and they fucked it up. Like,
What happened 2
So-
years ago?
or 4 years ago with fucking Gary
Oh,
Johnson.
with Johnson. Yeah,
They
that was
couldn't get
terrible.
5% of the vote.
That was really their chance. That before Trump was able to prove anything, because at this point
Where
with
is
his record,
Aleppo?
Oh, yeah.
I actually prefer the way that Gary Johnson bombed Aleppo than Trump did, but
Or Obama, yeah.
like,
yeah,
I don't know, nothing against Joe Jorgensen or the Libertarian Party. I looked into her.
Why?
She has no political experience. But like 4 years ago, I wasn't even expecting them to win, like at all. I knew that was unrealistic. But if you wanted to get into the position to win and start winning, you have to get 5% of the vote so you can get national funding, so you can get on the debate stage. And then the next election, you get 15, 20% of the vote. And then so on, you grow till in
Right.
20 years you stand a chance. But the political party's just kind of been such a standstill for how many years that this is where we are now.
well,
And they're never
libertarians
gonna do
hate
anything.
libertarians. We
Exactly.
it's like I don't even want to say
There's-
we because I can't associate with them anymore. But there's so much fighting within the ranks.
I refuse to associate with them anymore.
You can't
Yeah.
anymore. You just can't. They're insane. They have motherfuckers at their conventions wearing diapers and running around.
Exactly.
That sort of degeneracy.
Yeah.
Live and let live only goes so far with me. That's utter degeneracy. That cannot be tolerated.
It's not a good
Not with
platform.
me.
That's for sure.
It's-
As I can
it's
say,
a
if you want to,
bastardization of the platform.
if you want to
That's
wear
what it is.
diapers and run around shirtless,
Oh, here we go.
that's fine. I mean, is that not fine?
Yeah, it's a free country.
I mean, people could do whatever the fuck they want. Honestly, I agree with that. Like when it comes to something like that, with
People shouldn't.
with what you want to wear, I'm not going to tell you what to wear. But when it's like you're saying, when it's up on
you can wear
a
whatever
stage,
you want. It's not gonna.
when
I'm
it's
not gonna
part
take
of
you
like
seriously if you ever.
No, I know. That's what I'm trying to say though. Like it's not the fact that they do it, it's just that they're in that setting and they're putting that up as part of when they're doing their conventions for the Libertarian Party. Like that's not a good
Right.
image whatsoever. So I agree. Like it's just
Nah.
it's too hard. Like while I can agree, like sure, you can act like a fucking retard.
It's warping
Don't do it
the
here.
policy. It's warping the policy and the fundamental ideology of that political faction into becoming something that is so utterly laughable it's no longer viable to be even remotely discussed as a fringe political movement. It's
Right.
done. It's dead.
Exactly.
It's dead.
And I think that's where it's completely like lost it for me. Like I'm saying, I'm not 100% behind it. I'm just trying to say like I'm not against the fact that they do that. It's just that's what the image of the party has become. So I just can't even associate with it.
Embarrassing yourself.
I am.
No,
You guys
I
wanna
can't
do it, I'm
associate
gonna
with
keep
them
laughing
because
at
they
you.
don't have a true platform. Because the beautiful thing, it's a double-edged sword. The great thing about being a libertarian, is that you can believe whatever you want to believe, and you have your rights to do so. But at the same time, that opens the door for so many different political ideologies. And you look at some of the biggest issues in the country, and libertarians are pretty split on them. Like you look at abortion, like there's whose individual rights are being violated. It's such a I mean, there's some things that are home runs like gay marriage, whatever. Let them do whatever they want, and stuff like that. But like, I mean, as far as abortion goes, and like the thing I worry about with like Baird and stuff like that is like completely banning abortions is not the answer. Because there are legit reasons to get one. If it's going, the three ethical reasons for an abortion are that incest, rape, or if it will cost the mother her life. And I agree with those. And I agree that there's occasionally a time for there's appropriate situations for first-term abortions or even stillborn babies. Like why cause the mother to go through it if the baby's going to be a stillborn? Now, do I think that somebody who doesn't want a child can just go get rid of it? No. But at the same time, do I realize the economic implications of that child's going to be on welfare? That child's going to be, going to cost the taxpayer so much money. Is that a reason to kill it? No. I believe in adoption. But also at the same time, like, third-term abortions are abhorrent. Like, they're terrible. Like, that's murder. And even second-term, like, in the later stages of it, like that, I 100% disagree with. First term, I'm more open to. Should it be banned illegally? No. But should there be some more restrictions? Really, it should be a state right, if anything.
Sure. Has she said anything? I don't know what she has said.
I think she leans towards. So the thing about Roe versus Wade that I don't think people understand is that if it gets overturned, abortions don't necessarily become illegal. It just becomes a state's right.
Sure.
As opposed to a federal right. So it's going to be up to the states to decide whether or not they allow abortion in there. And that's the whole argument of Roe versus Wade and why it goes to the Supreme Court and why it's such a big issue. Now doctors have to perform them, blah, 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 opposed to working in a state where they have the choice. I don't know. I know she's against it. I don't know how much, if she's completely against abortion. I'm guessing she is because just how religious she is. But at the same time, she's a woman, so maybe she understands a little better. And I don't know. I'm torn on that, and that's the thing about libertarians. Going back to that is can't come up with an official party stance on a major hot button topic
Right.
because there's not a solid platform, because you could make a libertarian argument for both ways.
Sure. Well, yeah, I wouldn't make the libertarian argument against it. I think I would go more on the conservative side of it all and say, like the three things that you pointed out. If we put it to where these are the accepted terms, the scenarios or whatever you want to call it, I think that incentivizes people to ultimately be more responsible. I would hope. I don't know.
Sure.
Because then you'd be like, well, now I'm really stuck with it. I can't just go out and have an abortion, because I do know somebody, or through one other person. So it's like somebody that is close to me. It's this person's friend that has had multiple abortions. She would go out, get drunk, sleep with random dudes. If she got pregnant, just undo, hit Control Z. Like, when you have that sort of a thing set up, it's fucked.
I don't know if wrong's immoral might be subjective. It's definitely irresponsible to do, or more than just the reason of getting yourself impregnated. I definitely will say that. She poses a fucking biohazard by participating in that particular behavior. But who the fuck am I to tell bitches to keep their legs closed? I suppose. Look, it shouldn't even be a federal issue. Like, a lot of these things shouldn't be federal issues, because obviously by creating this particular legislation in Roe v. Wade and that decision, you have essentially, how do you say, at the very least subjugated 30% of the country that believes that abortion is murder. I think 30% is fairly generous to give. I'll give 30% to one side, 30% to the other, and I'll give the other 40% right down the middle. And I think that's being generous right now in this hyper-partisan climate. But to make that decision a federal mandate, and then to also continuously challenge conservative states on their stances regarding abortion and their attempts to limit it to the first trimester or however many weeks or whatnot, to constantly set those challenges up. What did you expect was going to happen if you're a liberal-leaning individual once the conservatives finally got that hint of power? Finally, after all these years, they do have a conservative majority, and they will. It'll be 6-3 in theory. It'll be 5-4 in practicality, because you don't know where Roberts is going to go. And now they are going to get rid of Roe versus Wade. And you know what? I welcome it. You know why? Because every single Democrat stronghold in this country already has Roe v. Wade on fucking paper. It's been typed up with all the addendums that Roe v. Wade's decision has ever had. What if it gets overturned at the federal level? Every one of those states will institute at the state level. And what's that going to do? It's going to cause a lot of mass movement by women or men who want it legal or illegal. And that's how it should be. This is not a federal issue. Not to me. Just like gay marriage, or marriage in general, is not a state issue to begin with, state as being government. If you want to set up something called a civil partnership between men and women, and men and women and women, and, well, there are only two genders, so that's all we'll go with. That's fine.
Actually, there's 34.
Oh,
72.
last
I think.
check there was 22. They've added a couple. Okay. Anyhow.
Oh, I'm thinking of pronouns. My bad.
It should fuck. It should be a state issue, including marriage. And I think that what this debate showed me tonight, to round it back, is that these motherfuckers don't believe in federalism. No. And that concept is dying. It's dying as I watch my Facebook feed get lit up with a bunch of people who are calling Trump the fucking scum of the earth, or calling Biden senile. It's dying because a lot of this power that's invested into the executive right now and into the federal government at large should not be there. It should not be there. This much should not be at stake. the Supreme Court should not be hearing Roe v. Wade because Roe v. Wade should honestly not even be existing. The argument that's somehow associated with the 14th Amendment, which was clearly made for the emancipation of enslaved people in this country, you're going to make the argument that women are enslaved by their own action
You
to
know
the child?
I'm
I can't buy
responsible
that
for
as
all
a
my
legitimate
actions.
argument.
I don't know.
It's
I took
just
that a
not an
different way
argument
than
that holds
how
water
you
to
meant
me,
it.
and it's just not an argument that holds water to me. By principle, it should not be something that is already at the federal level anyways. I would hope that the court sees that and overturns it. And you know what? I would hope that the states would then pass their own legislation as a means of showing of virtue signaling, essentially. The left and the right can both virtue signal on this. And
Yeah.
then it can just be a mass movement of peoples to a particular territory or region of the nation that they would want to live in. And we'd all be the happier for it.
Well,
Instead,
Electoral college would sway a lot, but
I don't give a
well, here's my biggest issue with all of this is the Supreme Court shouldn't have conservative and shouldn't have liberal judges. That's not the point. The Supreme Court is not supposed to be in favor of whoever the president is at the time that elects them. The Supreme Court is supposed to be unbiased and make rules off the law of the land and civil liberties ingrained us upon birth for being a citizen of this country. It shouldn't be so. The Supreme Court's not supposed to be politicized. It's like the one area of United States government, the branch of the United States government that is it is unbiased and non-politicized, and that's why they make these important decisions. So when you have all of these conservative judges coming in and all of these liberal judges coming in, that's a problem to me because that's not, in my belief, what the Supreme Court's supposed to be.
Sure. Well, they're just supposed to be one of the checks and balances between the executive and the legislative.
Exactly. But it's
So-
not that anymore. Like, otherwise, this whole ordeal won't be made about Trump getting 3.
Well, they try to make it that way, but as far as they vote, I guess I don't look at all their records, but I thought
Outside
that
of
like
Robert.
Kavanaugh,
Yeah, Kavanaugh
he's
has
been kind of down the
less
middle.
conservative.
So
That's what it's supposed to be too, though. Like that's why I don't
right,
have a problem with Kavanaugh.
They're not supposed to rule based off of the letter who appointed them to the court.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and I just haven't seen them
But
doing that
but
largely. I
it's
guess I don't
okay
know.
to notice particular tendencies that are evoked by the certain justices in the ways that they will rule. And
Oh yeah,
that's where the idea of conservative justices versus liberal justices comes from, is how the interpretation of the law is applied in the matters of social and economic policies that are passed by different legislatures, whether that's federal legislature or individual state legislatures. That's where
Well,
the
Old
terminology
John Roberts might be in some pretty hot water if these rumors are somewhat true. And there might be a 4th judge getting appointed soon, so
oh jeez.
If Trump
You guys
wins
have heard
this,
about
I've not heard any sort of scandal about
John Roberts' name was on Epstein's flight logs. Now they don't know if it's that John Roberts or not.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fairly popular name. One of the justices starts with a B. Hold on.
It's not Clarence Thomas. It's not Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh starts.
Breyer.
No.
No, Breyer. Last name is Breyer. That man's 82 years old. You are now entering a scenario, again, by this whole notion that the justices should not retire unless they have a executive and a Senate which have their political interests in mind. You are operating on that principle, and you're going to have Stephen, however you enunciate it, Breyer, on that court for another 4 years, and he is nearing into his mid-80s. Shouldn't do that. That's dangerous. I don't like that. I don't want that. But that seems to have been the principle. It seems to have been the principle with Ginsburg.
Nope.
It seems like it's going to be the principle with Thomas. It definitely is going to be the principle with Sotomayor and other justices that are on that court, is that they will not want to give up their seat to individuals who are going to elect justices who will not, vote in the same particular way that they would vote if they were on the court. We've already seen this with Thurgood Marshall's retirement, and Clarence Thomas got elected or nominated. And look how big of a fucking shit show that whole hearing was. That was the equivalent to Kavanaugh. That was our Kavanaugh, is Thomas's hearings. So we're going to have that now. We're going to have this every single time hearings are made for the Supreme Court. You shouldn't.
Ginsburg could have
this is on
stepped
Harry.
down pretty easily when Obama was in office, and they could have put a 45-year-old.
At 2012, they could have done this. But they
So
got
really-
greedy.
Yeah.
And to explain to listeners, I don't know if you're recording this, Ryan.
I am.
To explain to listeners, in 2013, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, a Democrat, changed the rules for appointing
Yep. Judges.
appeals court judges to no longer require 2/3, which would have served everybody a lot better because you can find more compromise candidates, and because you never get supermajorities in the Senate. Hardly ever, as far as my recollection of senatorial composition is. You rarely ever get them. But in 2013, they decided to change those rules.
Right.
And I can only assume they meant to change those rules because the Republicans were giving them a hard time, mainly because they didn't like the judges that were being put forth. But the issue is that the moment you change those rules, there's the moment that you have to acknowledge that this club that you're pulling out can and has gone into the hand of the individuals you most fear it to. You opened a Pandora's box. What is going to stop Mitch McConnell from opening it further and saying, okay, you want to do this with appeals court judges, which, by the way, hear a lot more cases than the Supreme Court does per year.
It all goes back to my
Appeal-
Trojan horse idea.
Appeals judges are, some might say, far more important than Supreme Court justices because of the position that they hold in deciding certain cases, and the fact that the Supreme Court doesn't nearly hear enough cases to really have that great of effect. On the big ones, yeah, they'll hear those cases and it'll have a widespread effect. But on the underneath, you don't hear about appeals court judges. So 2014 rolls around, Mitch McConnell gets in, and now there's tension. Now you busted this dirty trick out on us. We're not going to fucking give you an inch.
Yep.
And McConnell didn't. And Obama was lame duck in his judges for those 2 years. But Ginsburg did not retire, I don't think, because they wanted to bank on either Thomas or Scalia. And they got Scalia, but Scalia went too late. It was the midst of an election and a Senate-controlled majority in the Senate, or a Senate majority Senate. So what's Obama to do? He can't do anything. Any of his appointees are going to get struck down because he made an enemy out of McConnell.
And that's the biggest thing people don't understand is they didn't push through Garland. Well, it's because they didn't have the Senate. It's completely
Yeah,
different. Like,
they
that's
didn't have the ability to do so. You think they didn't want to if Harry Reid retained that majority and didn't lose 9 senatorial seats in the 2014 midterm? They'd have appointed Merrick Garland very quickly. Very quickly. They would have done that. Election year or not, we're in the midst of an election. I have news for people who are going to make this argument. Trump is the duly elected president until January 2021.
that's what
He
he said.
assumed office in 2017. And if people are not connecting this together, this is a failure of every single United States civics course that has ever been put out there Common Core, state policy, doesn't matter. It's an absolute abject failure.
Yep.
But any dirty trick to win, I guess. And
No.
it's. I'll say this to the point of it being unprecedented. Not necessarily, but it is a mass violation of what has been a general principle, which is, hey, if we're going into election year, gentleman's agreement, we'll let it slide. We'll let the people decide who it is that we are going to have fill the executive. We'll see how the Senate shakes out, and then we'll get to deciding it. That was a gentleman's agreement, but all gentleman's agreements are null and void after 2016. There is no gentleman's agreement anymore.
No.
2016. You can go further back than that.
No, like, okay, so to be fair, let's say it's December and Biden won, and then Harris or Ginsburg dies. I would agree that, okay, Trump shouldn't make that decision because he's only in office until, like, you could make the argument that he should, but then I would be a little more like, okay, clearly this should wait. I would agree with that. But we're not even to the election day yet because election day is apparently now November 10th. So I don't think you can make that argument.
In some states, it's a difficult. Democrats, for those people who have kept up with their particular stratagems over these last decade, even further than a decade, if you've kept track of what they've been doing, there is no moral hill, at least from a political sense, that they can claim. They've played nice from a social standpoint, that they pulled out every dirty political trick in the book and offered a smile to the American public saying, look, the Republicans are just being unreasonable. No shit, they're being unreasonable. They think that you're passing a bunch of whack jobs that are going to drastically change the fabric of the nation, how they're going to adjudicate, how they're going to rule on particular laws. No wonder they're going to continuously resist. No wonder they're going to use that rule of there needing to be a 60-40 for the confirmation. You took that rule away. You opened that Pandora's box in 2013. And now, if Trump does win, this is potentially 4 Supreme Court seats. He's already got 3. That Amy Coney Barrett is going onto that court. There's nothing anybody can do to stop it.
No, the best to have is that she's a colonizer. Side note, how interesting was it that Joe Biden would not admit that he was about packing the courts?
He didn't deny that.
He denied. He said, I'll tell you when I'm president. And when Trump asked for his list, he said, I don't need to disclose that. He said, will you pack the court? He goes, I'm not going to answer that. Like, he straight up refused to answer it.
So then what are Republicans going to do? They'll just pack the court the next time they get power.
You can't. Because you need Congress to pack the court.
They'll yeah, I'm willing to bet the House one of these days is going to go, and so will the Senate. They'll both go red one of these days. And when that day comes,
lines up, yep.
What the Republicans are going to do is go wham, wham, wham. You wanted to add 2 more seats? Okay, we're going to add 4 more seats. And we're going to pack them with all the radicals that we could possibly find that will rule in, well, I say conservative, but I mean is the neocon sort of way, because that's who is in control of the GOP and still is. They're just as desperate to get Trump out as anybody. No wonder why people like the Lincoln Project are going to throw their support behind Biden. They're grifters. Anyhow, they will play this game and they will pack that court just as well. They don't care. It goes too far. It should not. It went from 7 to 9 at some point. 9 is fine. 11, and then what's it going to be? 13 to 15. But why not just give it 6,001 Supreme Court justices? As long as it's an odd number, right?
Yep.
You want to talk about the violation of decorum? It's right there. This whole claim about packing the court, which it doesn't even make sense because Trump is appointing this person within the purviews of his power as president in the duly elected period.
They try to act like it's something brand new. He can't do that. It's like, yeah.
He can. It's just they don't do it because of a gentleman's agreement. But why would Donald Trump, after the last 4 years, ever give you a gentlemanly agreement to anything? And I can already hear the left responses of, oh, Trump gentleman, good joke. Throw that out of your head. Just, just a ridiculous, that'd be a ridiculous kind of
when
assertion to make. He can make deals.
When has the left ever given him a break?
Yeah.
When has the left ever done a gentleman's agreement with him? Look at the media.
They're not,
when he was giving them money years ago.
Maybe, but the media is more biased now than it ever has been.
Oh yeah, that's terrible.
It always has been biased. They just haven't shown it. They've shown it.
But
I don't believe this.
Ever since COVID happened, like the media is so clearly left, and they aren't even hiding it anymore. Look at the mostly peaceful protests on CNN thing. Like it's not even like they're not even playing the game anymore. Now they're just like, yeah, we fucking hate Trump. We hate Republicans. We think they should all be dead. Like, and all you have is fucking Tucker Carlson is the only like shining star on the right. Like you have your Candace Owens and your Tommy Lawrence and like, but they're not the same. They don't have the voice that Carlson does. Like,
they're not mainstream.
No. So it's so ridiculously biased now where I never felt it was. And then like I said, I think COVID kind of changed everything.
Well, I think Trump getting elected started it. Because you could see that shift, but the fact that they're not hiding it at all.
They still hit it a little bit, though. That's the thing.
Right.
Whereas now it's not even like, now it's like, oh, this is what it is.
They're
like,
not subtle whatsoever. Well, they'll even they'll push all the lies just blatantly.
Oh, yeah. And they get caught up in it and it doesn't matter.
Just
like, look at the Biden, like, fact checking and stuff like that. Like, how and like so Joe Biden gets a lot of shit for his gaffes and like the 200 million American or the 2 million Americans with the COVID thing, like that one's easily understandable. He meant to say 200,000 or whatever it was, like, or even like the Delaware state versus Delaware, like, okay, it's your alma mater, but like I get that one.
Or when
like,
he read military when it was supposed to be Michigan.
Like I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on stuff like that, just as a gaffe. Like you can't like say, oh, he's senile because he read something wrong or because that. I think that's kind of dirty reporting. But like as far as everything else goes, like
when you do it so often though, and
it
seems like you really don't know what you're talking about, especially when it comes down to reading a state's initials. Like, you're supposed to be running the fucking country. You've been vice president. You've been in politics most of your fucking life. But then when we're talking about all these political issues, you stumble through it all. It's like, it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to want to give him a break because it's like, you should be good at this.
I don't know. I mean, you can say there's plenty of things that Republicans, like Bush and even Trump, have got their words mixed up on stuff. Like Bushisms was a thing.
Yeah,
and,
yes, and still is a thing. And I love it.
I know. I mean, you guys know I'm a Bush fan, so it's hard for me to say. Like,
but the difference is that we see the particular Bushisms. We just know that the guy just fumbles over his words. That's easy enough.
In his book, his autobiography, he actually mentions that it's significantly easier for them to nail ad-lib speeches than it is for them to go off of written teleprompter, like written stuff. It's a lot easier to screw up the written stuff than it is to just speak from your mind.
Oh, of course.
Terrorists.
Well, and I think that's where a lot of those Bush things got fucked up. Well, and like the whole thing with the whole "fool me once," I highly doubt that was written down in front of him, because if it was, he probably wouldn't have fucked that up so bad.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying that it's interesting to read. Like, it's a lot easier to screw up stuff that's written down for you on teleprompters and read it perfectly than it is to just speak from your mind or speak from your heart. Like, I get
Bush would have
it,
been
and
a
I'm
great-
not excusing it, but like Joe Biden,
Bush would have
like,
been a great
I
meme
don't-
president.
Right.
the
Biden
the
is just
earpiece
sad.
factor was interesting today,
Which
and I'm kind of wondering how much that played into it.
sorry, what'd you
Interesting to read
say?
about.
The earpiece thing. earlier today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I heard about
I
that.
actually
The
wonder
pulling
how
out of
relevant
such.
that was tonight. Why he didn't fumble his words. He can't go into a speech by himself with no crowd there and do anything and get through halfway through it without screwing up. He was able to debate Trump without any major gaffes today. I
Yeah.
don't know, man.
It was impressive.
So I
Gave
don't
him
know
a
if
bunch
he
of
had something
Adderall
to-
before.
Well, that could be.
I don't know.
I almost feel bad. Like he presented himself and handled himself really well tonight, but like watching the videos of him just like up there stuttering and like fumbling over his words, like you almost feel bad for him, like in the sense
Yeah.
that like you were put in this position, and yeah, you probably agreed to it by all means, but like
So
you're not insane mind, like.
yeah, maybe he did do better because he didn't have the teleprompter. It's a possibility.
Well, I'm saying, I wonder if he was getting fed what to say.
It's a possibility too.
Is to say that it's all going to be completely. No side will believe the other. That's how far we've come. Is that neither side, no matter who wins, is going to believe they've been
We'll just be more polarized
falsely
after this.
subjugated through the muddling of an electoral process. Even if the Biden camp isn't saying it right now, if they did lose, I think if it was showing that they were losing, I think they'd raise objections. One way
Oh,
or the
yeah,
other, to some
absolutely.
particular through some particular means, they would raise an objection.
I mean,
Yep.
the red
Again,
scares the fuck out of me.
this is again
Yeah.
why I hope that he wins the popular vote, but Trump wins the EC, and everything just it's just everything happens the same as it did in 2016, except maybe 2% less of people vote. Just to, again, a low warning shots to every politicians that we're becoming fairly apathetic, and apathy might turn into anger fairly quickly. It's just, I'm just throwing it out there. Guys, maybe you want to put up some people like Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe
Yeah.
you want to put up some people like, maybe
I was
not
saying that
Matt
today.
Gaetz, for fuck's sake. New blood, perhaps. And Trump, old as he is new blood. Let's not mince that. He is a political newcomer. He's never done anything like this before. Those type of people, I'm okay with entering. I'd rather them enter the House of Representatives first before they ever enter the presidency. But Donald Trump's a particular celebrity who, he's going to be able to get away with breaking those rules. But Gabbard, I feel like this would not even be a close race if she was put in, because she's young, she's attractive. Imagine the DNC hype machine behind her. It's just the issue that she utterly despises the DNC machine. She despises it. And
She could have
the
won.
same thing could be said, and the same thing could be said of the RNC as well. We all have our gripes about 2008 and 2012. Let's not mince words. Ron Paul was screwed,
Yeah.
utterly screwed. No other way to describe it, sir. On the case of electability, do you have any? What kind of question was that?
Yeah.
It's enough to say that I want, it's enough for somebody who's tried to keep paying attention to this stuff for the better half of the last decade to say, you know what, fine, elect the Orange Man again. If it gets closer to burning all of this down, so be it. If it's all going to go down in chaos, I'd rather have the greatest clown in the world at the helm rather than some guy who can't remember to tie his shoes.
Yeah. Get our entertainment value
Paint him
out
with
of
the
it.
Joker face. Paint him as Heath Ledger. Paint him as Joaquin Phoenix. I don't care anymore. Just let him go. Let it go. If you if you want to talk about burning down the system, Trump is the best way to burn it all completely to ashes and cinder. If you're invested in that particular thing. Now, the caveat to that is all those people talking about burning down the system are not exactly going to be the sole arbiters of how it's going to be rebuilt, which I think is what they actually want. I don't think they just want to tear the system down. I think hidden in that particular statement is a desire to build what they want to be their perfect system, which
Right.
I don't trust any of them. Not a chance. Because their system might involve taking to the street and burning other people's property. And then trying to shame a bunch of people by saying, oh, but life is more valuable than property.
Right.
Insurance will
You
cover
have
it.
insurance.
Yeah, all those empty platitudes. But if you're invested in truly seeing the system collapse in upon itself, like I am,
Vote for the
I
orange
would
man.
say that the candidate that you'd want is the orange man who says a lot of shit, because he's the best way of showing the hypocrisy of neolibs and neocons. And he's the person who's going to bring down this whole charade that they have concocted for themselves for the better half of 40 years, where they've enriched themselves. I said it, and Spenny brought it up again. It was Nixon back in the 70s that opened all this stuff up with China, and all the rich executives and business owners of Wall Street and whatnot, and American politicians too, saw it as an opportunity for enriching themselves. 50 years on, America doesn't seem so much more enriched, especially when we see how deep the Chinese have embedded themselves in all sectors of the economic structure, not just entertainment, in tech, in farming, in pharmaceuticals. The list will go on. It's a deal with the devil, and finally he's come to pay up, and finally he's come for his due. So now the reckoning's here. Now what do? Well, we're going to have to... We see how unbalanced this thing is with the Chinese government. Well, now we have some guy who's going to put tariff on them. Well, they're going to put tariff right back on us. Well, okay, no more soybeans for you. Enjoy starving.
Yep.
It's a trade war. That's what's going to happen. And it's better.
It's already happening.
And I wish Driver was here because, I don't know how much we'd agree or disagree. I think me and Driver would disagree on this, and it would make a more entertaining kind of product instead of all of us just agreeing with one another. But I completely agree with tariffs, especially when it's noted that you are, when the individual you're trading with in different sectors is obviously adversarial to you.
Right.
Even though it's going to harm those who you have in stewardship, who you govern, you have to find a means, obviously, of relieving their fall to an extent. Maybe set up a new trade deal. I hear those Latin American countries could use some more food. Maybe some more, if we're going to outsource something, maybe it's to them. Might solve a lot of problems.
They can't afford it. So my issue with tariffs is that, in trade wars, is that ideally in a free market economy, trade wars should not exist. But the problem with that, to get that, is you would need the entire world to be a free market economy, which it is not. If the entire world traded freely without any, government interference, it'd be different than, you're exporting to other governments and stuff like that. And that's what I understand. So I'm against them, but I also understand why they're necessary.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, no warfare would be necessary, but that's what we're in, is an economic war.
No easy
or
answer.
particular hegemony. It's, as far as tribalism is concerned, there's always going to be some form, some existence of it. Much as we try to, emphasize the individual within this country, there's always going to be some form of tribe, whether it's I hate Wisconsinites, whether it's I hate Dixie, whether it's I dislike the coastal elites, or whether it's I don't particularly like the Chinese government or their sympathizers or supporters. It's always going to be there. You're always going to fit into a tribe. Just don't be mindless about it.
Yeah,
That's it.
true that.
Jesus, it's 11:15. Okay.
Yeah. I should probably go to bed.
What final
Yeah, I gotta
thoughts?
work tomorrow.
Yeah. So before we leave, what final thoughts do you have on the debate? Anything?
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered all of it. I think it was
I'm
a shit
embarrassed
show.
being American.
Yeah.
Me
there
and
were-
Gary on the opposite spectrum. God bless America. God bless it. I think this is great.
I mean, it was entertaining as hell, but I think just as far as
That's it.
him actually, like, if Trump wanted to do a good job of putting himself in a good light, he had the opportunity to do so, but he just went off the rails. The whole thing went off the rails. So hopefully the next one's maybe a little more organized and we can have a little bit of back and forth, because he could really drill Joe Biden on some of that shit. If he just lets Joe Biden talk, dig himself a hole, and then come in swinging. But he just kept swinging right in the
Be a
middle through the whole
counterpuncher.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, be a counterpunch to the next one. All right, Gary, you have any thoughts?
No, I just I enjoyed doing this. I think it's very nice and constructive for us to be able to share our thoughts and opinions as it's going on. I wish we could pause a little more so we could have gone back and covered stuff as it happened. But as far as just looking at it from production value, I think we did. I enjoyed this. I think that we need to do a full night marathon on election day.
Yeah.
And give the people who follow us what they want.
Yeah. And we might be able to pause these debates. It would just draw everything out, because it's a YouTube stream. I should be able to just pause it and then continue it.
I mean, if we could cover it and stop after every segment and go over it, I think it's from a production value. That'd be great.